Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo Namaha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Hindu Yoga Dharma. So this is a very interesting and powerful presentation today, and this was inspired by reading a paper written by the late O.P. Gupta, who was a former ambassador, I believe, to the Scandinavian countries from India. So remember, this was an Indian Hindu from India. Remember, there are many combinations of that. India is a country, Indians an ethnicity, and Hindu is the religion. Now, here was an individual who was all three. From India, Indian ethnicity, and a Hindu. And he was chiding his fellow Hindus with what he called the G.A.S.S principle, an acronym, G.A.S.S. And he was telling his fellow Hindus that far too many of us suffer from genetically acquired slavery syndrome. And he didn't give any solution, but he talked about the basic problems that many Hindus have encountered due to their own capitulating mindset, their own inferiority mindset. So, obviously, we need to look at a positive. So, we can look at gas in general, G.A.S., and there's obviously in life there's negative gas or noxious gas, carbon monoxide, and there's good gas, O2, oxygen. So it makes a lot of sense to bring on board positive gas, and we're using this as a metaphor, an analogy for life itself, and this makes a lot of practical wisdom. So first and foremost, and AI does a beautiful job with creating these teaching collages if you put in the right information. So you can pause the video at any time and go through these collages. And this one is especially significant here. You may want to, and feel free to make any screenshots, and you could take them to Staples, for example, and have them blown up, put on your wall, put in your mandirs, temples. So if we look in general, before we speak specifically about Hinduism, we can understand this G.A.S.S principle in a very human way. Every successful individual life, every healthy society, depends upon a basic respect for teachers, the place where they teach, the teachings, and then one's own self-effort. Now, in a broad sense, this G.A.S.S means respecting one's teachers, starting with the parents, the teachers in the school system, the employers, religious teachers perhaps, and then respecting where they teach, respecting the home, respecting the school, the office, the workplace, the mandir, the church, the mosque, the gurdwara. And then obviously respecting the teachings, starting in the home, the rules and regulations of the home that the parents set down, and then applying our own self-effort in all four areas. And remember also the progression in life. All parents were once children. All teachers were once students. Employers were once employees. And all clerics, if you will, religious guides, they were students. So it makes a great deal of sense to respect these four areas. Now, it just so happens that in the Hindu Dharma, Hinduism, the Hindu religion, the teachers are generally called gurus. A guru is a teacher of Hinduism. Where they teach, generally the ashrams. And what they teach are the shastras and their own individual teachings. And then it's up to every Hindu to do their own sadhana. Very, very powerful to see how we can guide ourselves towards a more positive experience in life, and how we can, by neglecting this, have a more noxious or destructive or poisonous experience in life. So the negative gas, the poisonous gas, it begins when Hindus forget the strength of their own dharma. It begins when Hindu identity is softened, hidden, apologized for, or surrendered. It begins when Hindus accept the idea that Hindu words, Hindu practices, Sanskrit, Tamil, of course, Hindu symbols, Hindu wisdom is renamed, secularized, universalized, and repackaged. This is capitulation. It is capitulation, negative G.A.S.S, when Hindus allow yoga to be removed from Hinduism. It is capitulation when Sanskrit, the ancient Arya or noble language of the Hindus, when Sanskrit terms are used everywhere, while the word Hindu is treated as embarrassing, perhaps, narrow, sectarian, or unnecessary. It is capitulation when the modern yoga world uses words like mantra, guru, karma, chakra, avatar, meditation, well, Raja Yoga actually, ashram, pranayama, dharma, and yoga, but completely avoids acknowledging the Hindu source. It's capitulation when Hindus themselves begin repeating the language of those who have erased them. It is this poisonous form of G.A.S.S, when Hindu terms are misused and emptied of their depth. When the modern world uses mantra, guru, chakra, avatar, etc., and avoids the Hindu source, yoga now becomes stretching. Guru becomes an influencer. Ashram, perhaps a spa. Mantra becomes simply any affirmation. We even hear politicians use that. Dharma becomes vague spirituality. Sanskrit may become a decorative branding. Karma is part of pop psychology, if you will. Chakra becomes wellness merchandise. Avatar becomes a digital profile. Meditation becomes stress reduction without sadhana, without shastra, without guru, and certainly no moksha. This is not merely translation. It's removal of context. Any cursory study of classical Stanga Yoga by the Saiva Hindu Guru Patanjali will show that it is antithetical to the modern so-called Astanga Yoga. And remember, the Saiva Hindu Guru Patanjali never mentions one specific asana. Simply sthira sukhamasanam, find one steady, comfortable pose, to what? To transcend duality, dvandava and vagataha, and enter into the absolute. Poisonous gas is so dangerous because it does not always look like an attack. Sometimes it looks friendly. Sometimes it looks inclusive. Sometimes it looks modern, fashionable, therapeutic, academic, and of course commercial. But underneath, the same pattern may be operating. Hindu dharma is consumed, renamed, softened, and then returned to the world as something no longer Hindu. This connects with Rajiv Malhotra's theory of cultural digestion and his U-turn theory. In his explanation, one culture may consume another, absorb what is useful, rename it, repackage it, and then eliminate what does not fit. In his tiger and deer analogy, the deer disappears into the body of the tiger. The digested culture is no longer recognized as itself. This is what happens when Hindu Dharma is digested by modern systems. Yoga, mantra, karma, chakra, guru, Raja Yoga, contemplation, and Sanskrit are consumed, absorbed, secularized, universalized, and of course, commercialized. Then returned as de-Hinduized spirituality, wellness, psychology perhaps, or simply modern yoga. This is negative digestion. This is poisonous gas. Can you imagine if you took baptism and turned it into underwater therapy? If you took communion and simply turned it into a wine tasting? But people don't seem to bat an eye when you have hot yoga, power yoga, doggy yoga, laughter yoga, nude yoga, goat beer yoga, Ted's yoga, Kino's yoga, Adrian's yoga, ad nauseum. And all of these modern yogas, or a great many of them, have ended up in tremendous scandals. Simply look at the so-called hot yoga Bikram Chowdhury and what happened to him and his very illicit behavior. And if you consider for a moment the street term, if it's not Hindu yoga, it's all hot, stolen. This is where Ganesha must return. Ganesha becomes the elephant not in the room. In other words, when Hindus forget Ganesha, when they forget the foundational intelligence, grounding, humility, discernment, and right beginning that Ganesha represents, powerful symbolism, whether you look at this as an actual deity somewhere or not, the symbolism is so profound. And life is symbolism. And as we think, we start to become. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. Ganesha is synonymous with the Om, the first sound, the primal sound. He's synonymous with the earth element. He's synonymous with the first chakra, Muladhara. As a remover of obstacles, this is absolutely necessary before we start any task. Clear the boards and then move ahead. Of course, Hindus know that Ganesha is worshipped first, but do they know actually why? He's invoked before every sacred undertaking because if the beginning is confused, if there's no foundation, if one doesn't take it seriously or gravity, serious but not too serious, of course, then obstacles are planted in our way. Interesting antidote. Gave a satsang to a group of primarily Indian Hindu physicians in America, and it started with Ganesha. And one fellow said, "Oh, Swami, we know all about this. We want perhaps something else, something deeper." And I asked him why he worshipped Ganesha first. And you know, this is, every Hindu knows this. I said, "Yes, but why?" He said, "Well, this is what we were taught from young." I said, "Yeah, but why?" And everybody started laughing because he didn't really know why. This is sad. If we don't know our own dharma and the symbolism of our devatas, well, again, whether we see this as an actual deity somewhere or not, is kind of, in a way, secondary. The symbolism is profound, and taking on that symbolism, as you'll see here, take a moment and explore the symbolism of Mahaganapati and how it makes so much sense to incorporate this into one's life. This is what it means when we say we are established in Ganesha consciousness. So if Hindus themselves erase Ganapati, when modern yoga begins erasing Hinduism, it begins with an obstacle already built into it. So again, Ganesha is the remover of obstacles, but he's also considered the revealer of obstacles. He shows us where the foundation has been forgotten. He's connected to Bhumi Mata, Mother Earth, our home planet, to the Muladhara chakra, the root foundation. So logically, before one rises upward in anything in life, one must be grounded, good foundation. just like our positive gas. Before one speaks of a higher consciousness, Kundalini, chakras, all of that, one must stand on a ground of dharma to be safe and to be effective. And Ganesha also represents memory. That's all part of the first chakra. Never forget who you are. He reminds all of us to remember where yoga comes from and what Sanskrit words mean and why we need positive gas. We must not forget. Forgetfulness is not innocence. Forgetfulness can become capitulation, negative gas. Ganesha represents buddhi, intelligence, discernment, vivek, wise understanding, samadhi. He's not merely, quote, cute and auspicious, unquote. He represents grounded intelligence that's absolutely necessary before any serious undertaking. This is central to our gas teaching, because the poisonous negative gas comes from confusion and capitulation. The positive gas requires clear discrimination, meaning discernment, vivek. Ganesha represents also shraddha, full faith. As we've gone from asha, hope, through time and testing, into shraddha, a full faith in something or someone, and in the dharma in this case. It also means trust, reverence, confidence. If Hindus lose shraddha in their gurus, the ashram, temples, etc., shastras and sadhana, they become vulnerable to outside gas, negative gas. Ganesha restores trust in the Hindu path. Ganapati represents stability. His large body symbolizes steadiness, patience, grounded being, and rootedness. He's not blown around by every modern trend. He sits with the weight of dharma. Remember his creation story as Balaganapati. He was willing to stand up to protect his Mataji, symbolic of protecting truth, of values, protecting the dharma, even in the face of Mahadeva Shiva. As a young boy. And there's a powerful recognition here for all of us that as we live life, we have to learn to stand up for principles, for ourselves, for others, for the dharma. And we can't expect to win every time. That's not the way life works. Actually, we learn from our losses, sometimes more than our wins. So in this story, beautifully profound symbolic story, that seems a little ghastly to some, especially outsiders, and they use it as a source of criticism. What happened to Ganapati? He lost his head. Powerful, powerful symbolism here, because remember that sometimes we lose and sometimes we lose big. How much bigger can you get? You lose your head. But everything turns out all right in the end. In other words, we have to learn that when we stand up for principles, we won't always win. Sometimes we lose really big, but we have to stand firm and everything will be all right in the end if we do. And also notice there's another profound symbolism here, that who was it that cut off his head? It was his guru, his father, Shiva, Mahadev. Which means that sometimes the guru is very misunderstood by the shishya or the chela. And what does one do? Run away? Or stand firm? And forever they're together as a united Saiva Hindu family. So sometimes you just have to put your ego on the back burner and realize there may be a greater principle going on here. So Ganapati represents humility. And this is central to our G.A.S.S principle. His large body, steadiness, patience, grounded, rootedness. He's sacred. A bit unusual, of course, but that's how remarkably popular he is. He's one of those popular deities. Very interesting. Represents both power and humility at the same time. And Ganesha should teach us as Hindus not to be embarrassed by sacred difference. Listening to words of wisdom. His trunk provides a powerful teaching as we fill up at Ganesha's service station. In life, we need to learn to be strong, flexible, and sensitive. 3 qualities of that Vilambita Sutra, that trunk. Strong, flexible, and sensitive in our body, mind, emotions, and Atmana. And then what happens? If we're strong, flexible, sensitive, sometimes the trunk will go right to the laddu. Then life will be sweet. Just consider the opposite. In all of these things, consider the opposite, and the positive teaching makes sense. If we're weak, physically, mentally, emotionally, soulfully, if you will. If we're weak, if we're insensitive, inflexible, or lacking flexibility, life won't be sweet. It'll be sour for us and those around us. Strong, flexible, sensitive, life is sweet. And the trunk is strong enough to move heavy objects. They were the original heavy equipment in India, but yet sensitive enough to pick up a small flower or a coin. Now, if we look at Ganesha's belly, all of this culminates here. We want to seek santosha, a sense of contentment that comes from bringing all of this Ganesha consciousness into our life. Ganesha's belly can also represent the digestive power. This is not only physical digestion, it's symbolic digestion. The ability to absorb, process, and transform life's experiences. We have to digest history. We have to digest, and this means examining, invasions, colonization, humiliation, internalized inferiority, genetically acquired slavery syndrome, and the modern yoga appropriation. But, fellow Hindus, this does not mean becoming bitter or weak or hateful, and certainly not confused. It means learning from the past, processing it with wisdom, and now transforming it into strength, clarity. That's healthy digestion. Healthy digestion means remembering. Again, back to the first chakra. It means learning, processing, transforming, and strengthening the dharma. Unhealthy digestion, on the other hand, means allowing others to consume Hindu traditions, erase the Hindu source, and return de-Hinduized leftovers. This is why Hindus need to fill up at Ganesha's service station, G.A.S.S. You know, it's very telling that in the past, many have called the ashram wanting to take yoga classes because the name of our organization, very appropriately to make everyone think a little bit, it's Classical Yoga Hindu Academy, Dharma Yoga Ashram. Those in the modern yoga movement see the word yoga and they don't kind of see the word Hindu. For we often get calls, well, I'd like to take a yoga class. Can you tell me how much it costs? First thing. And I always say that, oh, you'd like to study the Hindu religion? They say, no, not the Hindu part, just the yoga part. What? So you call up a Christian minister and you want to use the baptismal pool and you want the baptism part, but not the Christian part? That kind of ludicrousness should be a sign of how ludicrous is today's spurious yoga. Remember, folks, that the Sanskrit Hindu word yoga per se has nothing to do with the physical body at all. Yuj Atman Brahman Cha. To yoke, Y-O-K-E, to your Atmana and Brahman. We're already deep now into Hinduism. So is Ganesha the elephant in the room or not in the room? Because his absence is a problem. When Ganesha is forgotten, the foundation is forgotten. When the foundation is forgotten, confusion spreads. When confusion spreads, yoga can be anything anybody wants it to be. Dharma is diluted, Sanskrit's misused, and Hindus begin to doubt the value of their own inheritance. But when Ganesha is remembered, the foundation is restored. So it's absolutely necessary that we use the prefix to describe how Hindus are seeking this Atma Darshana, this yoking, this realization of their Atmana. And there's progressive nature here. We do karma yoga, Hindu ethics, and selfless service, seva. We do bhakti yoga, Hindu devotion. Importantly, because devotion is a general term. Are you talking about Christian devotions, Islamic devotions, Jewish devotions? This is why it's very important to clarify these terms. Bhakti yoga are Hindu devotions. Then we move into Raja Yoga, Hindu contemplations. Remember, the phrase yoga and meditation is extremely confused. Unfortunately, many Hindus also use it. Think about it, yoga and meditation. There's so much wrong with that. I'll let you figure that out. Gyan Yoga, Hindu studies, outwardly and inwardly, yes. Books are fine, books are wonderful. But we also remember that we need to, as others have said, open the book that's within you, the intuition. Now, within our classic yogas, Karma, Bhakti, Raja, Jnana, Tamalan, Chariya, Kriya, Yoga, Jnanam, in the Vedas, Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Jnana Kanda, we have the classic Hatha Yoga, which are Hindu devotional postures. We have Mantra Yoga, Hindu devotional chants. Natya Yoga, Hindu devotional dance. Nada Yoga, Hindu devotional music and song, bhajans, kirtan. And do you know that of all these classic yogas, and of course notice we didn't mention Hot Yoga, Power Yoga, Dog Yoga, Laughter Yoga, Travis's Yoga, Kino's Yoga, innumerable names for yoga, putting one's name on sacred Hindu religious discipline. Of all the yogas, the only one that our ancient rishi says, don't display this one, come on. Should be quote-unquote obvious. It's Hatha Yoga. Why? Because it does deal with the body. And they knew that we as human beings, who are appropriators, who are not prepared for what we're doing, we're infatuated with our bodies, we would focus on the physical, and that's why we have all these quote-unquote yogas now that are just primarily physical exercise routines and some kind of vague spirituality thrown in. Anything but Hindu, of course. Hatha Yoga, the very word Hatha is referring to Hara and Hari, Shiva and Vishnu, and the moon and the sun, as we worship the divine in the elements, in the creatures, in the animals, and specifically Hindu deities. There's no, I guess perhaps in Christian yoga, the so-called Christian yoga, there's no asanas to Jesus or Muhammad, etc., because it doesn't belong there. We need to respect the different religions of the world. And to verify the Hatha Yoga, as secret we need to look to the classic texts, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Giranda Samhita, Siva Samhita, the Siddhasiddhanta Bhadati of Yogi Gorakhnath, for example, and to a guru. They all said same thing. They first worshipped Adyanatha, Shiva, because he epitomizes the Hatha Yogi. But they all said, Hatha Vidya Bhavedi Yavate Guya Niveda Tu Prakash Varanam. So Hindus, what are you doing? Why are you letting this go? They all said that this knowledge, Vidya of Hatha, is powerful, Bhaveda, when you keep it secret, Guya. And Guya is also for Muruga, Skanda Muruga. Be a youthful, loving warrior like Krishna and Hanumanji. Be a Kshatriya for the Dharma. Not violent, no, but just stand up. Protect the Dharma. And it loses power, Niveda, when you display it. Tu Prakash Varanam. Those of you that have been to some of the large mandirs in India, you had the blessing of the physical elephant before you enter into the sanctum sanctorum. What a wonderful connection. Animal, human. And remember, in our Om, it is the bringing together in our own body of the animal, human, divine nature. Vaishvanada Tejasya Prajna. Also waking, dreaming, dreamless, asleep. So the powerful Vilambita Sutra makes you bow. I don't care how physically strong one thinks one is. You must bow. And bowing is humility. And humility is not being humiliated, my dear Hindu friends. It's being wise. Humility is wisdom. When we bow to our devatas, we bow to our elders, we do pranams. What does that mean? It means we have respect for them. But it also means that the person that you're bowing to has an obligation too. To be worthy of having someone touch your feet. Be respectful. Stand up for the Dharma. Do your responsibility. When Shishyas, Chelas bow to their gurus, it's also telling the guru, you have responsibility. Do the right thing. Teach me. Stand up for the Dharma. That's your purpose. When one becomes a Swami, for example, after many years of brahmachari and renunciation as a yogi, one of their primary vows is to protect the Dharma. Stand up for the Dharma. Otherwise, what's the point? Take a moment and look at this teaching collage here and see what's happened. What happens when you take something from its roots? Does it not quickly die? So is this not all dead yoga? Even though paradoxically it seems very much alive, but So all of you who are interested in what you think is yoga and want to go further, what you need to do is really take a step back. Of course, you shouldn't be teaching. Then study. Study the Dharma. Go to mandirs, ashrams, temples. And then if you find that this is the Dharma, the religion, it's a recognized world religion, of course. If you recognize that this is the religion for you, well, then do the right thing. You can become a Hindu, just as you can become a member of any of the religions of the world. This has been a problem that many have said you couldn't become a Hindu. Remember, Hindu's one thing, Indian's another. You can become a Hindu through study, but through formal commitment, which includes a namakarana samskara, a name change. You don't keep your Christian name, which primarily most people have taken on a Christian name, or perhaps from another religion. You don't retain that. This is very true to most all religions. Anyone can become a part of them, but then when you do, you also take on generally a name indicative of that religion. That's why you'll see formerly Indian Hindus, for example, who have become Christians, now they become Jim or Tim or Mary. So you can formally become a Hindu through the Namakarana Samskara. Then this would be an absolute precursor to becoming a teacher. This would be true to any religion. Would you ever go into a church, a mosque, a synagogue, and wonder if the person up there teaching was a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim? You wouldn't even think about it. So true to all religions, the Hindu yoga religion, Hindu Dharma, Hinduism, is taught by Hindus. And, again, true to all religions, not for a fee. They're all on a donation basis. You can't make a business out of it and still be honest. There's a business end to all religions, of course. They have to survive, they have bills to pay, etc. But the teachings are so profound, and they're so open to everyone regardless of income, that the dakshina, which is what we call it in Hinduism, or donation basis, is absolutely the way to go. It's in all religions. You don't have to pay to go into a church, a mosque, a synagogue. But it's important to leave a donation so that the religious institutions can survive. This is part of respecting the second part of our G.A.S.S principle. You have to keep the home alive. You have to keep the schools alive. You have to keep the employment places alive. You have to keep the mosques, synagogues, temples, and churches alive. So let's move on to something that we call the GEM principle. We'll go into more of this. We're going to do a separate video collage on this. But looking at the acronym G.A.S.S, we can also bring together our basically three sampradayas that we have in Hinduism. So the G stands obviously for Ganapati, the A stands for Ananta, and the S stands for Shiva, and the next S stands for Shakti. Ganapati, Ananta, Shiva, Shakti. So in this G.A.S.S principle, we also have a harmonization of the basic three sampradayas in Hinduism. That's testament to Hinduism, even though there are many subgroups within that, of course. But basically, it's about three. Compare that to Christianity, for example, it has thousands of sects. So basically, we have the worship of the Saiva family, Ganesha, Muruga, Shiva, Parvati. We have the Vaishnava family. We have Ganesha, Krishna, Vishnu, Lakshmi. And also, you have the progression from Ganesha to Hanuman, to Sitaram. And in the Shakti Sampradaya, you have Durga Ma, Mother Lakshmi, Mother Saraswati. So we'll go into this more. This is a profound understanding here of working with the dynamic forces in life, and then understanding the GEM principle in general, and then understanding it specifically from a Hindu point of view. So this is another aspect to our G.A.S.S principle. With Ganesha as the foundation, remember he's the foundation of all the sampradayas, of all Hindu Dharma. Then you respect the Vaishnavas, Ananta, you respect the Saivas, and you respect the Shaktas. Ganapati, Ananta, Shiva, Shakti. So this becomes a reminder to all of us that Vaishnavas, Shaivas, and Shaktas should not be enemies. They're members of one vast Hindu family. They may express a little different sacred emphases, but they all begin with Ganesha first. This is why the G matters. Now, excuse this if it seems a little crass to anybody, but what happens if you take Ganesha out of the equation? If you take G out of our acronym? What's left? Now, this may sound a little sharp to some of you, and even humorous, perhaps. But the teaching is serious. When we as Hindus forget Ganesha, we forget our shared foundation, memory, the Om, Bhumi Mata, gravity. When that foundation is forgotten, sampradayas can often become a rivalry. Difference becomes serious division, and sacred inheritance becomes vulnerable to confusion, embarrassment, capitulation, and misuse. Without Ganesha, many Hindus lose that good, solid foundation. And without right beginning, even noble traditions can become overly proud, fragmented, reactive, or careless with the Dharma. As Swami Vivekananda said, sects there will be, but sectarianism, extreme sectarianism, of course, need not be. And remember what Swamiji said. We're going to do a nice video on the importance of the word Hindu. What did he say? Again, if we can't be unified as to who we are, what's the point? How does that look like to outsiders? Remember, Hindu is the original homeland, and it's a beautiful word, Hindu. Chandra Sri Soma Bindu. This is what it means to be a Hindu. Swamiji said, quote, when the name Hindu sends a galvanic shock through your entire being, then and then alone are you a Hindu. And when you come to the aid of any Hindu in distress, then and then alone are you a Hindu. So we have a couple more beautifully produced AI collages here, teaching collages. So you can take a moment, look at these, and again, feel free to reproduce them or share them with others. Interesting one from pose to poser. And again, remember that Hatha Yoga was the one that was supposed to be kept secret. And again, do people realize when they're doing what they would call standing warrior pose, which is very much in the media when you see advertisements on TV, they often use this one. Do they understand that this is deeply into stories within the Hindu Dharma of Sati and Dakshina and Daksha and Shiva? When they do dancer pose, do they realize that this is all about an adoration to Nataraja, the divine dancer? When they do the splits, that's an adoration to Hanumanji. Again, if one wants to teach stretching and relaxation classes, and even meditation, which is simply an English word meaning concentration, and charge money, fine, do that. That's honest. But when you use the word yoga, and you don't equate it with Hinduism, and you're not a Hindu teacher, and you're charging money, that is totally dishonest. So the caveat is that if you're teaching stretching and relaxation, well, just be honest and say that this is what you're doing. However, if you learned it from the Hatha Yoga of Hinduism, you need to state that, to be honest. So an honest representation could be, for those who choose not to go into Hinduism, to not respect the Hindu Yoga Dharma, say, I'm a stretch and relaxation teacher, and I learned some of this from the Hatha Yoga of the Hindus, but since I'm not a Hindu, and therefore not authorized to teach Hinduism, right, we are just doing stretch and relaxation classes. And then leave out anything with Sanskrit names. No Namaste, no Shakti, no Shanti. Then you're being honest. But as soon as you start using Sanskrit terms like yoga and Namaste and chakras and Kundalini, etc., and you're not upfront telling people this is Hinduism, that's dishonest to them. You're dealing with their own inner psyche. And you need to take responsibility as a teacher for what you're bringing people into, because many people are extremely naive and they have no idea they're getting involved in Hinduism to one degree or another. Just by using the Sanskrit words, they're getting introduced into Hinduism. And this may be totally offensive to them, to their current religious feelings. Just as an anecdote, I remember several years ago, a girl called up wanting to take a yoga class. And of course, I remind everybody, you're studying the Hindu religion. And she said, oh yes, I know what yoga is. So she was clearly deluded by today's yoga that's been divorced from Hinduism. She walked into the ashram and saw all these deity pictures, etc. And she was shocked and scared. She said, oh, I'm a Catholic, I can't be here. So you see the problem of not being upfront with someone? So Hindus, you need to step up to Ganesha's service station. Take on board the good G.A.S.S. Respect your gurus, the ashrams, the shastras, and the sadhana. And to the non-Hindus, well then, teach your stretch and relaxation classes. And if you want to become a Hindu, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, you're welcome to study. Study on your own. Go to a local ashram, temple, mandir, etc. We have many profound teachings on our YouTube channel, including many, many podcasts, videos, etc. So all the best to all of us, because we want to bring on board the good G.A.S.S. in general, and then specifically as Hindus. Respect your gurus, the ashrams, the shastras, and sadhanas. as we're all going from untruth to truth, ignorance to enlightenment, asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotir gamaya, seeking peace, but a peace through strength and justice. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.